So moving on to our topic, after we've discussed, moving on to our topic, now we'll talk about survey questionnaires for quantitative. All right. So why a survey questionnaire? Well, a survey questionnaire is what you use for quantitative. Uh, A questionnaire, allows us to collect data in a quantitative way wherein we get to ask questions. And within that questions, the options are particular, are specific, are more in line with the thing that we're studying. Of course, you could always ask questions, but if you use some sort of open-ended questions, you never know what type of answers you'll get. Sometimes you get long format answers. Sometimes you just need to know yes or no, what is one, two, three, and four. So that's why we use questionnaires, which are by nature quantitative. All right, it uses numbers to collect the data. Right. So first, why do it? Because of objective measurement, it allows us to consistently get numeric data. And again, if we talk about numeric data, what gets measured, gets categorized, gets described, and importantly, gets predicted. It's used for statistical analysis that we'll discuss later on, but quantitative, right, by the use of numbers, allows us to use statistics, which is also by the use of numbers. And by statistical analysis, this allows us to validate hypotheses using the statistical techniques through the statistical test that we're doing. And again, by validating findings, you confirm some research accuracy. With statistical analysis, you identify patterns, you could see trends and relationships. With statistical analysis, it allows you to support decisions, make informed decisions and recommendations because, again, these are objectives and based on facts. And again, using statistical analysis, it ensures objectivity. You're not subjective, no gray areas, as much as possible objective. If the data says yes, if the data says no, based on certain standards, and we'll discuss about that. And why survey questionnaire? For generalizability, because it provides data that are representative to a larger population. We'll discuss that especially with the category of sample, the sample size that you're using. Of course, with sampling, because as much as possible, you try to select representative samples for your study. And when you say representable, they could allow a generalization of the population, even though you've surveyed only a handful. A handful, but still many. Okay. It encourages randomization, just to ensure that you remove biases in your study. It uses large sample size. If Imagine if you try to interview the entire population of Quezon City, for example, good luck with that. But if you implement a survey like a census, it's easier to collect those data, especially for a large number. And also using survey for quantitative, it allows for clear methodology for following a consistent process. And of course, efficiency because we can collect data from many respondents. We have a wider reach. We have standardized data. Also, it's cost effective. It's cheaper than going one on one using interview. And again, it's speed. It's expedite. So why a survey questionnaire, especially for our case, since majority of us, all of us, will be using quantitative approach, including me, because it makes researching easy, especially if you're using validated questionnaires that have already been published, that have already been used throughout the test of time, and you're just reusing it for the purposes of your study. It makes life life easier, especially in data gathering, as I mentioned, like to collect the data of an entire city. Good luck with that. Uh, There's a reason why some questionnaires stand the test of time because, again, they've been validated before for their consistency, reliability, and their validity, and they just simply correct and adjust it with changing trends with the changing time. But sometimes we have to create our own questionnaires, especially if we don't have access to these published questionnaires. In our case, now we don't have access, so we create our own. It's okay to create our own, provided that we follow the necessary steps, the necessary ethical steps to do it. And of course, we create our own questionnaire, especially if we're trying to discover a new phenomenon. Bago lang eh, so who has a questionnaire for that? It will be our job to create questionnaires that tests the theory, tests the construct in a way that it is still in line with the study. So in this video, I'll show you how to create your own questionnaire for your quantitative test. Right, so a good questionnaire must be valid. So what is valid, by the way? Valid, okay? Valid, it means that it tries to measure what it intends to measure. Okay? So think of a thermometer, a tool, an instrument that measures temperature. That is a valid instrument. But think of a thermometer that measures other people's happiness, their opinion, their state of mind. That is an invalid instrument for the case that is trying to found. Okay? Validity is again the tool doing what it is intended to do. Think of a hammer. A hammer and a nail, that's a valid instrument for a valid use. Think of a jackhammer for creating holes in the ground. That is a valid instrument. Think of a dental hammer for your teeth. That's a valid instrument for the tool. Now imagine this. Think of a jackhammer for your teeth. Is that valid? Think of a dental hammer for creating holes in the floor, on the ground. That is not valid. All right. So validity is that the tool trying to measure, trying to do what is it is intended to do. Internal validity means within the questionnaire itself, right? The questions are consistent, okay? They are valid. They tend to measure what they're trying to measure internally inside the questions try to coincide. Okay, as much as possible, it is accurate. Externally, it reflects the differences in groups that help us create a category, no? But is also representative of common features of people and thus being valid, reliable, consistent. It helps us to predict data with the use of statistics. So again, a good questionnaire must be valid. It must be consistent. When you say consistent, if you apply that to the same group of people over a period of time, as much as possible, they're still in that, that average. It is reliable. Okay, when you say reliable, when you apply the same tool to another group, for example, it's also able to measure the same average of number. Of course, there are differentiating variables aside from individuals, but also social cultural factors. But as much as possible, again, valid, reliable, and consistent. So again, a valid questionnaire must be unbiased, administered to a large population, so it allows for a representation. Okay, as much as possible, even though you're trying to be specific with your group, as much as possible, still a large number of people. Okay, so for example, you're trying to study males under the age of 36 who are married, who are into military and martial arts just like me, okay? Not everyone is like that, but of course, you have the people that you test has to fit in that category. You don't just try to find one sample. You don't try to find just 10 as much as possible. No, no further, not fewer than 30. And again, we'll discuss that in our methodology section. Okay, so provided now, no, provided now that your questionnaire is valid, a good questionnaire is only as good as the respondents that they are trying to test. Meaning, provided that the questionnaire is valid, you have to give it to the right criteria of people for your study. Maybe is it biased? Not really. You're trying to be selective, participative. Okay, you're trying to be specific, but to as many as much as possible for you to be able to reduce those biases. So to as many respondents to the same criteria as much as you can. So with that, so with that, the data you could extract can look like this. If your test is the test you administer is binary, meaning to only two types of people, yes or no people only, and to only a few respondents, the image that you could depict from your data could look like this. It's black and white and pixelated. So what could you extract out of it? Could you extract meaning? Could you generate something from this one? Maybe yes, maybe no. All right. But if you have many diversified samples coming from as much as possible, all walks of life, but still fits your criteria, and from many people, a lot of people, right? So the data you can extract, you could create at the end of your study, could create an image just like this, colorful, meaning representative and detailed. You could see by the granularity of things, of course. And perhaps it can also be representative of the entire population. Okay, if you try to be unbiased, randomize as much as you can, and large enough that it could help explain the entire population. You know, but if you could do that, your study could hold significant bearing. Okay? Right. So how to make a survey now? You have to ask the right questions, of course. Okay? Then again, what are the right questions? The ones that go back to your SOP. We did a video about SOP, your statement of the problem. Now, if you missed out on how to make an SOP, you could go back to that old video. But for standardization purposes, you have a question for every variable in your title. Well, not all, just enough for your questionnaire. And when it comes to that, you should have questions about your stakeholders. What are the demographic profiles of your respondents? Questions about your independent variable. In my case, what are the levels of online learning for the respondents? Questions for your DV, dependent variable. What are the levels of online learning the respondents have? Questions about my DB. What are the levels of practical skills the respondents have on their applied work? And optional, if you're doing mixed methods, which we're not because it's long, you can also have questions about your goal, what recommendations they could say. Even in a questionnaire, you could also include some short questions, some short interviews wherein they could fill out their opinion. They could give in their experiences, what they think, best practices, and even challenges and solutions that they could provide. So again, a good questionnaire must ask the right questions, and of course, as much as possible, asking questions based on your SOP for your stakeholders, the demographic question, for your IB levels, because we're going to use statistics, and also for your DV, also levels, because again, we're going to use statistics. But then again, so before we formally start asking questions, at the last page of your thesis, you write down appendices, attachments. In this case, Appendix A, because this will be the first attachment that we'll add in our thesis. The research questionnaire, the demographic questions first. Now, remember, we want to ask questions first about your stakeholders, but before asking, as per APA 7, we have to introduce ourselves first. We have to tell them what this study is about, and more importantly, we tell them about their rights. Okay, who you are, the objective of your study, of course, informed consent, obtain voluntary consent by explaining the service purpose, procedures, risk, benefits, and also the right to withdraw. The right to choose if they want to participate or not, or withdraw even in the middle. Confidentiality and privacy. Keep personal information confidential and anonymized. Inform participants about how the data will be used and how it will be protected from the future. you have to disclose that. And of course, avoiding harm and deception. Some surveys, some experiments may involve deception. Especially in blinded tests. But fortunately, this is not an experiment. This is a simple survey. So I hope that deception is not part of your repertoire in conducting this. Plain survey will always be good. Again, avoid harm. If deception is used, it must be justified, and participants must be debriefed about it. Right. Now, you've done the intro. I'm assuming you've done the intro. Now it's time to ask the questions that can help you solve SOP1. In my case, what are the demographic profiles of respondents? You could ask just about anything when it comes to the respondents, but doesn't mean that you have to ask everything. You could ask anything, but it doesn't mean that you could ask everything. Only relevant demographic questions for your study, right? These ones, for example, in your study is more personal. You could ask their name, again, optional, age, gender, marital status, highest level of education. You could ask those, but don't ask all. Just the ones that are relevant for your study. Now, this one, for example, if you're leaning towards questions related to business, you just have to be sure that your questions are clear and concise. Ensures that questions are straightforward and unambiguous. Okay. It use simple language. Avoid jargons that makes it complicated. Just language is easy for them to understand. Of course, respect privacy. You have to frame sensitive questions carefully. So you can also offer prefer not to answer option. If they don't want to answer, there's that option prefer not to answer. Okay. Be consistent. Use uniform format for questions to ensure clarity. If it's going to be a check, a circle, I don't know, as much as possible, consistent. uh, Avoid leading questions, to avoid biases, ensure relevance, of course, ask only questions necessary for your research, provide balanced options. Sometimes you have to offer the others, you see that others, check others if needed. Mind cultural sensitivity, especially now when it comes to gender, it's no longer male or female. Sometimes you have to provide that option. I don't know. It's just the time that we're living now, and of course, respect time. This limit the numbers of questions that keeps the respondents engaged. Remember, this is only just the demographic questions, so as much as possible, you try to keep it limited. Value their time. Right. So this is how mine looked like. Exactly like this. Answers can be categorical. They could choose categories, yes or no. It could be ordinal from one to three. There's an order, no? Categories and orders are up to you. It could be from 2 to 10 options. You could cluster them, especially if it's ordinal. Of course, with categories, you have to be sensitive. You can't use ratio when it comes to categories, right? Because I mean, you can't be 1.5 man or 2.5 woman. Let's not go there. It's either this or that. Categories, all right? Uh, there are optionals, as you could see here, optional. And when I say optional, they could answer something different. That's not part of it. Just to keep the options few, not not super few, not very few, but few enough for it not to be cluttered. You could also include prefer not to say, especially for sensitive questions. In my case, name is optional, they could say. Age is a very important thing in my study, but then again, if they don't disclose their name, I'm pretty sure that age would remain anonymous in relation to their name. Gender, they have the option prefer not to say. Employment status, full-time, part-time, freelance. If there are others that I don't know, they could include that. And I should format this. I should make the others longer line when it comes to specify. Again, there's a sweet number of questions. Most of your respondents, I would argue that all of us, if we're given a survey questions, don't like, don't really enjoy answering survey questions I don't know, for the first 3 minutes, and then the next 3 minutes they don't like. answering the question. So we have to be respectful of their time. Right. So now we move on to SOP number two. We're talking about what are the levels of learning the respondents have. This is my IB. So now we'll make questions related to the IB, right? So measure the levels of your IB. Go back to your conceptual map. This really helps if you have a good conceptual map. This is my IB in my conceptual map. I have categorized my IB into four. Okay, online learning. I am not just going to measure online learning in general. I'll try to measure the levels of the four types of online learning. Asynchronous with cohort, asynchronous that you have classmates, even though you're not seeing each other, but you have classmates enrolled in a particular semester doing the thing in a parenthesis of time. Synchronous, meaning synchronous, you see each other face to face. Well, not face to face. Zoom, like Zoom digitally. You see, synchronous, synchronize. Your time is synchronized. Blended. Sometimes you do online. Sometimes you do face to face. Self-paced, self-paced meaning it's asynchronous. You don't have classmates. You do the thing at your own time, at your own pace. There are no semesters. You could just simply enroll, especially for diploma courses, for example. All right. Okay, so as much as possible, you try, yeah, measure the levels of your IB. As much as possible, you try to find published questionnaire. You could simply Google that. An instrument tool. The keywords are instrument tool survey for online learning. And if you're lucky, you'll find something published, especially in Google Scholars, or simply just Googling them in just a simple Google. If you're lucky, again, if they're free, no need to access, you could use that. You don't need to use the entirety. You could use questions. Just simply copy the ones or paraphrase, get the ones, be inspired by the ones that you need. And of course, explain in your methodology where you've extracted the questions in relation to your variables. Okay? And again, you could make your own, but we have to test it for validity. Does the questionnaire you made answer the question that it is intended to answer? No? Uh, Ask the question, create questions, ask the questions related to the IB. If you're planning to have 5 questions that you try to create per category, in this case, if it's 5 times 4, that will be 20. At least make 7 because after the internal validity test, the Cronbach's Alpha, which I'll discuss later on, we'll see questions within those 7 that don't help the entire group. Okay? And when we have questions that tell otherwise, the entire average of the questions becomes skewed. You want to get as much as possible consistent and within a specific range when it comes to your questions. So if there's one question that drags the average, for example, all the questions out of 7 questions, all the 6 questions is a 5 for someone, and then there's this one question which is a 1, 2, or 3. It skews the average. So after the validity test, we try to remove that one question or two that does not help the entire category. Okay. Use Likert scale. I'm sure that you've heard about this. The ones you see on the right. This one, the one you see on the right, 5-point scales. You could use 4 points to force them to answer with non-neutral. 4 points actually there's pros and cons if you use 4 points and 5 points. 4 points, again, you force them to answer non-neutral. Some people will play safe. They'll just answer three. Sometimes they answer three all the way. Okay. But the thing with 4 items when it comes to statistical analysis, it's vague. As much as possible, you want to have 5. The best one for me is a 7. You want to get the full spectrum of what the person is experiencing. Okay, and as I mentioned, it's not just black or white. There are many shades of gray when it comes to your experience of online learning. So we want to get the right shade. So as much as possible, not just yes or no. 1 to 4, 1 to 5 will do. 1 to 7 is better in my opinion. But for simplicity's sake, let's just use five because most of the Likert scale are five. Likert scale allows for standardization, provides a consistent measurement methods for reliable comparison. Uh, it's for quantifiable data. It's flexible, no, capturing various degrees, opinions in nuanced views, and of course ease of use. Again, you could use AI. It's not that it's not allowed, provided that you disclose how you use it. As I mentioned, if you're gonna use AI, especially in these times, it's easier. In our times, we didn't have AI, so we have to construct construct a questionnaire and do Cronbach's alpha. You also have to get valid questionnaires, which sometimes we don't have access to. But with the use of AI, you have to disclose in the method section. Since we have limited time, you could easily prompt it. You could, that's the convenience with AI right now. For example, make me a 7 item questionnaire that measures synchronous learning and real life application 5 point Likert scale. So you just simply write that. Make me a 7 item questionnaire for synchronous blended and self-paced for online learning and real life application. Make you add 5 point Likert scale, and then again, it's gonna generate for you. That's that you try. Of course, you don't just simply copy paste it. You use your intuition, which questions are relevant for your study. Of course, you have to modify because if this is if paraphrasing, if plagiarism is not allowed as much as possible, you still try to paraphrase the question that has been generated to you. And get the ones relevant for your studies as well. Right. So once you have that, okay, you're still going to do the legwork, meaning you have to pilot test with 10 people. And again, with the 10 people, we're gonna test for internal validity. Lucky for you, I will do the callback alpha, provided that you do the pilot testing. Right. So when you're done, it would look something like this, always, yes, as I mentioned, always include an instruction. Don't assume that your audience already knows. Some people they treat one as the highest, number one, number one. No, not that they're wrong. It's not. It's just that you didn't explain. So you have to explain. In this case, one strongly disagree, four disagree, three neutral. I don't want to force them to choose black and white. So I have a neutral, agree, and strongly agree. Okay. Also, if you're gonna use reverse questions, those that reverse the formatting, for example, I like living, and then you ask, I don't like dying. See that? If you look at it, it's pretty much the same. If you're gonna use reverse questions, just to make sure that some people do the halo effect. When you say halo effect, they just try to rate with the highest. If you're a good surveyor for them, they give you the highest rating that they can. There's also the horn effect. If you're not a, not you're if you're not a good surveyor, they answer the lowest possible score. I mean, of course, it's not always going to be one. It's gonna be a 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3. Moving to that tangent. So to avoid those type of effects, halo or horn effects, some surveyors they reverse the questions para makasigurado lang na walang nanguhula ba. But I don't think that would be necessary. If you think it is, be my guest. But be mindful that one of your questions is a reverse question. So for example, in this, for asynchronous with classmate, I reversed the question of 1.5, I did not found classmate based asynchronous structural unbeneficial for development. So it's a double reverse, meaning that it's positive. You have to take note that 1.5 is a reverse. So if it's answered with 5, okay, you have to make sure that you just have to make sure that it's a reverse question. So an answer of 5 would actually mean 1. An answer of 1 would actually 5. And again, always keep your questions simple and short. And when you're done, it would look something like this, as I pointed out. Right, include an instruction, Questions should support each other, build accuracy and coherence. No negating question, and if there are negating questions or dragging questions, we they will be eliminated when it comes to the validity internal validity test. Be mindful of using reverse questions. Keep your questions short and simple. And it's done. If it's done, look something like this, and also this. Yeah. So these are the four categories of IVs in online learning that I have. So, when you're done with the IB, do the same with the DB. Do the same. If you need to create your own, create your own. If you could find an already made questionnaire online, use it. You could do some modification. It's easier to defend pre-made surveys, and also some if you use it, if it really fits what you're needing, right? For example, job satisfaction, and your IB is job satisfaction. You manage to find a survey that directly measures job satisfaction, and you use it. You no longer need to do some pilot testing, provided that it's already valid and you're using the items there. But nonetheless, pilot testing is still beneficial just to make sure that your questions are reliable and also valid as much as possible. Right? Yeah. All right. So this is the DB. Yeah, my DB is what are the levels of practical skill respondents report applied in work. I use an AI format. So I give the prompt, make me questionnaire that measures technical skills, problem solving, communication, collaboration, and professionalism, each with 5 items, 5-point Likert scale. I use AI. I would disclose that in my methodology section that I use it to brainstorm. But then again, as much as possible, you don't just simply copy paste. You try to select the ones related to your study. Okay, and what else? Well, try not to copy paste, just paraphrase, and it would look something like this. See, and when you're done with the demographic questions, with your IV levels of IV, your levels of DV, provided that it's Likert scale, uh, your job now to make life easy is to transfer it in Google Forms for you to distribute it online. But if you want to go old school, paper to paper, face to face, be my guest. I would suggest that you construct this in Google Forms, and also you need to construct it in Google Forms. I will require you so you could send that to me and I could give you feedback. And now once you're done with Google Forms, time to pilot test it with 10 respondents. All right. I hope this helps and I hope that you have fun in making your questionnaires. Coach Jojo, Professor Jojo, out.